This is Jim from Portage M&A Advisory, and you're listening to the Selling Successfully podcast, the show that simplifies selling your business for those thinking about moving into the next chapter of life. If you like what you hear, please follow or subscribe to find us easily and listen again. We're here when you need us. Welcome back to the Selling Successfully podcast. Very excited about today's podcast. We've got a great guest with us who I'm going to introduce shortly. It's all about business owners and what they should be thinking about before the sale. There's a lot of great stuff here. We're going to be talking about how to optimize the business, what you should be thinking about before you sell your business. Today, our special guest is Dan Holstein. He's a friend, he's a business coach. He's with Kaizen Performance. He's a scaling up coach, and we're going to learn a little bit about what he sees when he coaches individuals. Thank you, Dan, for joining.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I'm very excited about this session because I think both of us have, lenses into what we see when it comes to business and business owners and how they prepare. And there's been a lot of hype about businesses selling, but I don't think that there's enough attention paid to preparing for the sale. And I'm just curious, what are you seeing high level?
I see the same thing. Most business owners are so busy day to day, just managing their business, managing their teams, leading, putting out fires. They're thinking more in the near term, the now to near term,
Yep.
and they're not really thinking about the long term. Exit is often something that they'll think about one day, but it's too early.
Right.
But when in fact now is actually the time that people should be thinking about getting their business ready for sale. Not that they have to sell it right now, but having it ready.
Right. And we're seeing too in the M&A space that businesses that do prepare in advance are getting higher multiples. And I think we're going to touch on this in a little bit, but I mean, it's all about risk, right? And if you can de-risk the business, you can prove to buyers that there's less risk, you're going to get more. And I think as a business owner myself, what I'm trying to keep top of mind is how can I build something that is transitionable, something that is ready to sell in case someone knocks on my door. Yeah. And I think in the last 5 years since the pandemic and some of these other things, business owners have certainly been distracted with just trying to keep the boat afloat.
Absolutely. There's been so much change, right? Especially think about the geopolitical scenarios, tariffs and things like that are top of mind for folks right now. And it's just a lot of distraction. I mean, running a business, when I talk to business owners about how they got started, there's always an interesting origin story. I don't know anyone who, decided when they were a little kid they're going to be a business owner. It's always they somehow got mixed up in business.
Right.
And so they didn't have like a long-term plan. Right. And it's just trying to keep up, figure it out. They're still learning how to operate their business, even if they've been in for 10 or 15 years, still trying to figure out that's the new challenges are presented to them. And it's a lot. And many business owners have said to me, if I knew what it would take to be in business when I started, I would never have done it. Right. Because it's just constant challenge. And it's what we think about is the business is really a reflection of the business owner as well. It's like having the mirror held up. Everything that's going well in the business is happening because of the growth and learning that the business owner has undertaken. Right. But the challenges are what they're not learning through. And especially the challenges that repeat. It's like they haven't done the work to figure that bit out. And generally it's personal development and self-leadership that leads them to solve those things.
Right.
So sale readiness is something I talk about with clients from the very get-go. When I first onboard a new client, that's one of the things that we talk about is what does your exit look like and what's your time frame? And some folks are taken aback by that. It's like, oh, I haven't really thought about that.
Right.
But it's something we all as business owners need to be thinking about. Because like you said, if opportunity comes knocking, or if something unfortunate happens, say an illness or some other scenario like that, business owners put so much time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears into their businesses. It would be a real shame to leave money on the table. And if they had a little foresight, they would have that better valuation, have a better sale outcome.
Right. Let's take a step back here. You said something really interesting. Most business owners don't anticipate being a business owner, later in their careers. Let's talk a little bit about you. How did you get into business coaching, and what does your world look like right now?
Yeah. So I got into business by accident. So my first business was information technology, and in college, I had a co-op. I had a co-op at IBM, a co-op at a medium-sized company, and a friend of mine was running an IT services firm. And I wanted to work with him for the co-op semester. And I said, hey, can I work with you for a co-op? And he goes, well, I'm not going to hire you, but if you go register a company, I'll contract with you. So I did, not knowing that was the impetus of getting started. I'm like, okay, went downtown, registered the company. now I'm in business, and it just sort of went from there. So I ran that company for let's see, about 15 years. 13 years in, I actually merged up with a guy that I had the co-op with years earlier. He was a friend from high school. So, and I stayed on for about 18 months, and then I thought, as much as I love technology, I love working with people, and so I decided to move on. And I actually took some time off for the Christmas of 2010, and just thought about what do I want to do. And on reflection, I had been coached. I had a business coach in that business, and it made a huge impact for me in terms of my leadership, attracting great team members, being able to grow the business, and have balance, because that was where I was struggling a lot. I was out of balance big time. I was getting home late, wasn't seeing my kids, missing dinner, missing bedtimes. Business was just pulling on me constantly. And he really helped me to rein all that in and have the business work more without me.
Right.
Not without me altogether, but more without me, where, I could have regular, 45, 50-hour weeks instead of 70-hour weeks. And that was really impactful for me, because I wasn't very happy at the time. It was, just all that what I just mentioned, like missing out on family time, which is really important to me. And so when I thought about what do I want to do, I thought if I could help other people through their business challenges like my coach helped me, I feel really good about that. I would like to do that. So I reached out to him, and he said, yep, come on up. So we had a meeting, and I joined his firm.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was back in actually February of 2010, so 16 years ago at this stage.
Wow.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about the typical businesses that you work with, or the business owners that you coach.
Yeah, so I'm sort of business agnostic. I work with all kinds of businesses, everything from law firms to accounting firms, bookkeeping, field service, distribution, law firms, everything, just a wide gamut. But what's common between all of the different clients I have is that they have had some dissatisfaction in their business, but they also have a vision around it. They know that they want to do something a little bit different with it, but they just weren't quite sure where to start, but they're open to learning.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest sort of common trait among my clients, is that they're open to learning and applying themselves.
Right. And I think we have a pretty interesting story that we're, both a part of.
Yeah.
And I think, it kind of speaks to preparing your business, spending a little bit of time, and having a huge outcome. So maybe we'll jump into it, because I think there's a lot of value here. We'll call the client or the seller John. And I know you started coaching John prior to his exit. I was looking back, at the documentation that we created when we sold his business, and I can't believe the hockey stick growth that emerged, the last year. He put his foot on the gas pedal, and I truly believe without that surge, it would have been a bit of a challenge to sell the business, because it wasn't the largest business out there. It was in a great industry in the construction space. However, I do think that latest surge kind of showed buyers that, hey, there's an opportunity here. There's something significant going on.
Yeah, that was a great collaboration, actually. Like, I was so happy to help him grow the way he did, but then being able to introduce him to you guys to be able to take him to market, which obviously ended up really well for him. When John first came to me, he was approximately, I think, about mid-50s, 55, 56 years old. And he said, I'm thinking about retirement the next little while. I want to sell my business. So I analyzed it with him and realized that it was not saleable at all. Like, he didn't have anything to sell. It was really centric upon him. Real huge key personal reliance issue. He was holding all the balls in the air. Like, he was doing a lot.
Right.
There wasn't much in the way of documentation and processes and systems, but it's still a healthy business in terms of, it was doing, I'm going to say, approximately $1 million a year, and had about 25% net profit, which was very strong. But it would really relied on him. He couldn't get away, couldn't take time off. So it was really much, he was glued to it. So not saleable, because as we know, a buyer doesn't want to buy somebody's job. They want to buy an asset that's producing cash. So we went to work, and he was a very coachable guy, open to learning, and also applied himself really well. So we started working on his leadership and his retention of great team members and attracting great team members in, worked on training and documentation of their systems. He was largely responsible for sales at the time, and we worked him out of that role where he was more of like overseeing, and his team was running the sales. That was taking a lot of his time, and that was a real big move for him, because then he could focus on the strategic, the structural of the business, and help it become more scalable. So we worked together for about 3 years, and we ended up tripling the business, and I think the net profits tripled alongside that as well. And that's that hockey stick curve, I think, that you're referring to in terms of the growth.
Absolutely.
And he really applied himself. So hats off. He did a fantastic job really applying the learnings through coaching and business fundamentals, and having a shift of identity from being I'm a business guy. I do this construction business to I'm a business owner that happens to own a construction business,
Right.
which is it's a huge shift. I think a lot of business owners get stuck in that mindset of I am whatever the business is. Like I'm an electrician, I'm a plumber, I'm a lawyer, whatever it might be, as opposed to I own a firm that does that work.
Right. And I think that mentality is really important too, because eventually when you do sell, I think your identity and the way you view yourself and the value add is a little bit different than you being fully embedded in that brand and you being the brand. And I think one of the things that oftentimes, we'll look at prior to taking on a client is, are they realistic about their expectation? Is there value to transfer, or is the value going to walk out the door when the seller walks out the door? And I think in this case, as you mentioned, it probably would have been a really tough sale prior to him making some of these changes. But at the end of the day, if you think about it from a retirement perspective, it probably went from him likely either going to be passing it on to a few workers and saying, here you go, and not getting much for it, or perhaps worst case scenario, closing the doors, to actually having meaningful profit. Legacy continues on. There's a private equity group out of Toronto, high quality firm that has bought a few different businesses in this industry now, and they keep bolting onto the platform. So it's a wonderful story, and he really did create, a great opportunity for himself and was able to transition.
Yeah, he really did. And the proceeds from the sale secured his retirement, right? Which is such a good news story, because I think that if folks are waiting till their mid-50s to think about having their business saleable, sometimes it could be too late.
Right.
And you can't really time the market. I think it's how you phrase it, that an exit is earned, not timed.
Right.
Right. So you get ready for it ahead of time. So.
Right. So walk me through what some of the key pieces were that you really, worked with John time and time again, right? You talked about separating kind of themselves from the business, making sure that they had people in place. Are there consistent patterns? As human beings, do we kind of default to what we're comfortable doing? And you're getting in there and you're saying, okay, I have a pretty good idea of how to reconstruct the puzzle, or what does it look like typically when you get in there?
We're just applying fundamentals. What I find is a lot of business owners, we think about how they became successful. They became successful from doing what they've always done. And then when I come along and it's like, okay, we need to do something a little bit different, that can be really challenging for them. And one of the biggest areas I find that they're challenged with is with delegation and letting go.
Right.
It can be so tough for them because there's fear around letting go of a key task, or letting go of the management of a key client, because what if something goes wrong? And so that makes me think about the difference between delegation and abdication. What I've seen in the past is business owners, they want to get something off their plate. They have a team member that they talk to about it, and the team member says, oh, I can do that for you. And they're like, okay, great, here you go. But they don't have adequate training, documentation, process, and experience. And so the team member will drop the ball, perhaps, through no fault of their own, just inexperience. They didn't have those supports in place, and the business owner takes it back. And the lesson that they take away from that is, I can't get other people to do things for me because they're going to screw it up. And that's the abdication part. With delegation, we don't have that issue, because first of all, we make sure that the person you're going to give a task to has the requisite experience and skill. If they don't, you'll train them up before you give them the ownership of the task. And then you make sure there's the documentation, the process, and all that kind of stuff. And then the support, you slowly ease them into a role. And that way they can make little mistakes along the way, but they're not making big ball drop type mistakes.
Right.
And so then they can now run with that task.
Right.
And then the lesson for the business owner, that is, okay, if I do these steps ahead of time and plan for it, it works.
Right.
And so that's one of the biggest changes I see with business owners that are especially founders, and on the smaller side businesses where they really feel like they have to hang on to things, is they don't really know how to let go. And so they keep too much on their plate, and the business sort of plateaus. There's only so much time in the day for them to do what they need to do. And they're not leading strategically. They're leading by just this tactic and showing up and putting out fires and being really busy. So one of the key things that I see for getting a business ready for sale is that business owner really has to learn how to let go.
And it's a bit of a skill, right? Like,
it really is.
Especially when you're firefighting, you don't have the time to take a step back and say, what's really going on here? And I guess you provide that lens, which I think is very helpful. Here's the other really interesting piece of all of this, right? When you talk about putting people in place and them delegating, as a business owner, you think, how much is this going to cost me? Or how many people? In John's case, the business tripled, more than tripled, if I remember correctly. year over year. So it wasn't even like he had 1 year where it was a huge pivot, where there's a huge cost base, incurred. In his case, he kind of went from, a certain level, tripled in 3 years, and it was very consistently upward. So how did you navigate that piece? And do you usually find that there's a little bit of a cost burden initially, or is John's case pretty common?
There certainly can be. It really depends on the structure of the business. You might have to have some capital expenditure, like in a construction-based field service business like John's. Then, as you want to grow and add a crew, well, there's going to be the costs inherent with that, all the equipment, and truck, trailer, all that kind of stuff. So that's got to be factored in. We have to really be careful with cash management,
Right.
in managing inventory as well. As we're going, we're carrying more inventory pass through, so that's got to be managed as well. So a couple of things that we did was we sort of made sure that we had a really good, solid cash flow forecast in place. And we could then see, because this business was somewhat seasonal, we could see when the cash burn was really going to start. And we made sure that it had some financial instruments like a line of credit with appropriate depth was in place,
Right.
as we were forecasting that growth, because growth takes cash.
Right.
One of the other pieces that was really important to manage was receivables. And this is, I find business owners don't really focus enough on the receivables. They look at their P&L, profit and loss, and go, oh, look at that, we're doing great, but where's all the money? It's like it's tied up with receivables. And
Right.
business owners, if they've got the relationship with the client, they don't necessarily want to make that call. They have more of the salesperson hat on. They don't want to be the heavy and say, hey, where's the payment?
Sure.
So having a robust accounts receivable process in place and somebody besides the business owner owning it can go a long way to making sure that the cash is managed as well and those receivables come in on time or close to on time.
Right. So, I mean, you're working closely with the business owner. You're looking at their cash flow. You're looking at their financial statements, and you're helping put, something in place that's sustainable and is not going to take down the ship. So, in his case, you said a couple of interesting things. One is he was the sales guy. He delegated, sales continued to go up, profit continued to go up. So, I mean, what happened there? He's delegating sales, and I can tell you as a business owner, oftentimes I feel like I'm a huge advocate for the company. I understand how to pitch. I don't want to hand it off to someone else. Maybe they're not going to be as effective. What happened in his case?
Well, he had a really good reputation in the market. People were coming to him. So when I say he was running sales, he wasn't necessarily getting out there knocking on doors,
Right.
although he did for his repeat clients and maintain those relationships over time, which led to a lot of repeat business for him. But his business was well known, and so it was a lot more of I guess you could say order taking than actual outbound sales, but still key to make sure that process is managed really well. So we broke down what he did inherently and naturally into processes that could be trained for his team.
Right.
Even things like how to answer the phone, what to say, like right down to that level, how to ask for the order, and importantly, how to follow up, because they wouldn't necessarily get a sale on the first call.
Sure.
They might have put together an estimate, a quotation, and how do we follow that up effectively, keep that prospective client close and engaged.
Wow.
And he brought team members. There's some team members that were already in place that sort of transitioned into that role and did great with it under his guidance.
Yeah. And how long would you say it took before you saw some good traction and the financial results started to follow?
Yeah, good question. In the first 6 months, we started to see the needle started to move.
Yeah.
But it just sort of accelerated. And it's just the compound effect. All the little things that we did all added up. Any one wasn't a massive deal, but all the little things, they all started to sort of compound and led to that ongoing growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because in my world, we are looking backwards. We're looking at the story of the business, the evolution, and it's all those little things that we're looking for, right? Cash management, cash to cash. How long does it take for them to collect their money? What does seasonality look like? Who's behind the owner? What's the bench strength? What's the sales process? And when that documentation is there and the bench strength is there and the brand is there and it's selling and you have an engine, that becomes exciting. We know we can take that to the market and the buyers get very excited about it. And it seems like the work that you're doing is kind of putting those pieces in place. We're looking backwards and trying to identify those so we can document them, showcase them, highlight them, and then bring the right party to the table.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, helping the business owner craft their vision, because sometimes they know what they want. I want to sell someday. I want to retire someday. And one of the things we talk about is, well, who are you without your business? And I think that personal identity piece is an important one to solve, because If someone gets their sense of purpose on some level, or even self-esteem or self-worth from their business, like we get very integrated with our businesses, all of a sudden the business is gone. And it's like, well, now who am I? How do I add value to the world? What's my purpose now? And so I help my clients to sort of work through some of that as well to make sure that they've got something they're excited about. I forget which missions it were. I think with the Apollo missions back in the late 60s, early 70s, when the astronauts went to the moon, when they came back, some of them had mental health challenges because they didn't have anything else to do. It's like, once you've gone to the moon, like, then what? How do you top that?
Right.
So what I understand NASA then, for anyone that was doing any kind of big space travel, or some big event like that, they would have future projects already in place for them. So when they came back, they hit the ground running and keep on moving. That's something that was important to them.
Right.
So I think that's a piece that I've seen. If the business owner doesn't have that, they will stall on implementing what they need to implement to sell. I did have this with a client at one point where they really struggled with what they want to do after selling. They were in their mid to early 60s at the time, and it was time to, they had a strong, healthy little business, but it was time to really start getting ready. And they just struggled. They didn't know what they wanted to do, who they were going to be without their business. They've been in the business for 40 years. And the implementation strategies, like we need to hire a few people to start taking on some of their role, and they just dragged their feet. But we finally broke through and found it was because they couldn't fathom not having the business. So we went to work on that, who they're going to be, what they're going to do, what life was going to look like afterwards. Once they had a better picture, and it wasn't perfect, but they had some level of vision around it, then they started executing on sale readiness. But before that, it's interesting. You think, well, just get it ready and sell it. It'd be great. You move on and retire. But we have to remember that identity piece. We really are tied with our businesses more than we realize sometimes.
Yeah, and it's a great point, because it's a perfect segue into the next section, which is really about the value of preparing and planning ahead of the time. You really feel as though you need to plan for it. I mean, what we typically see in our world too is maybe there's a medical incident, maybe there's some sort of event that creates the conversation, but oftentimes it's far too late. And the data is now showing us that there's going to be $1 trillion worth of business assets that gets transferred over the next decade. Yeah. We've been hearing this for a while. And when I try to digest what this really means for the average business owner, what comes to mind is there's going to be a huge cohort of businesses transferring at the same time. We're starting to see the trickle. We're starting to see more and more people say, okay, it's time to sell my business. Well, guess what? Competition is going to go up. There's going to be more businesses available, and buyers can be a little bit more particular with which business they purchase. Also, what we've seen, and the data just came out today for 2025, I was looking at the multiples and the market conditions for 2025. Guess what? Banks are tightening up. They're getting a little bit pickier too about what they finance. They've gotten burned over the last couple of years. So they're becoming extremely particular about what industries they invest in, what businesses and business owners they invest in, which buyers they back. And all of this has led us at Portage to really think about how we can help business owners well in advance. And we came up with this concept called exit proof. So talking and working with business owners 3 to 5 years out, prior to them even visualizing the idea of retirement, and starting to think about, hey, if I start putting the pieces in place today, I will be ready for something enormous down the road, something that I've planned, something that I've mapped. I'm going to position myself ahead of the average cohort or the average business owner who's selling, and we're going to make sure it's durable and transferable. And to your point about the psychology and what the business owner is going through in terms of identity, they can create the roadmap that structures their retirement or their preference according to their wants and needs. And we're seeing more of this where business owners want to stay on. They want to add value. You can bring someone in, they can take a portion of your business, and you can phase yourself out. There's many options, right?
I think a lot of business owners don't know that.
Right.
It's surprising to them. They think that it's okay. I can hand the keys over, trade you the check for the keys, and off I go. But you're right. There's many options, and I think a lot of business owners aren't really aware of what those options are. So it's another reason to not think about it.
Right.
Right. It's like, oh well, I don't know. It's complicated. Kind of thing. I'll procrastinate on that. In terms of sale readiness, I think about it like this. We want to put our snow tires on our car in October, not in the middle of a snowstorm in January.
Right.
Right. And yeah, you might feel a little silly being, a month or so ahead of time, but you've done the work, you're prepared. If you're out somewhere and it snows, you're good.
Right.
Right. So I think it's sort of the same thing with business sale readiness. It just makes it so much easier to operate the business. Like we think of some of the key things that we want to have in place. We want to have a great team. We need great processes, great structure, great marketing in place, great sales process, great leadership, and not just the business owner, but leadership on the next levels down.
Right.
That takes time. And we haven't even touched on the corporate structure and the tax planning and things like that as well that need to be put in place. So in the example with John, he was unincorporated when we started. So that was one of the key things we wanted to do, is get him incorporated as well, which we did. And also he put his spouse on as a shareholder and director. And in Canada, if people are listening internationally, we've got something called the one-time capital gains exemption, meaning when you sell your business, you don't pay tax on a certain portion. I think it's up to the first million. Well, you also, if you're the primary owner, you can take advantage of that. But if you're not, if you're a shareholder or not the primary owner, it's 2 years. You have to be vested in the business for 2 years. So we need to have that time frame for the spouse to be able to take that tax advantage as well. So again, that's not tax advice. I'm not an accountant, but these are some of the things that we need to get the deal team together early as well, right? Know who your M&A pro is going to be, like you, have the right coach, have the right tax accountant, have the right lawyer that's done transactions as well. Because you might have a lawyer for 30 years that's been doing your corporate stuff, but if they haven't done transactions as well, then they're going to be a little bit out of their league possibly. So you want to make sure that you assemble that deal team ahead of time as well.
Yeah. And to your point, if I had to identify the greatest misses that we typically see, so someone comes to us and says, I'm ready to sell, they have no runway left, we take them to market, we sell. It's either the tax structure wasn't optimized, they have no bench strength, or they haven't thought through the process, they get in their own way, and they have no team around them to make the journey comfortable. And what I mean by the team around them is the deal team, right? So if they're working with a trusted tax professional who's also coordinated with their accountant, who is working with their business coach, their wealth advisor, to help them understand what their pre-exit monetary needs are, that's huge, right? And so what the research shows us, and there's a publication in the American Institute of Stress. Exiting your business is one of the top 10 most stressful moments. And they looked into this and they essentially said, listen, if you plan in advance, stress level goes down. And I mean, it's pretty logical. I mean, of course, if you have the right team around you and you give yourself time to digest and people are guiding you through the process and they're experts, it's going to be much easier. From a monetary perspective, oftentimes you think, well, how much is that going to cost me? And is the return on investment appropriate? What we found is they're getting at least half a times to 1 times their EBIT amount back by pre-planning. So not only are they investing in their future and doing the planning, they're getting more for their business. It's setting them apart from some of their competitors, other sellers. And the ride is a lot more enjoyable and less stressful.
Yeah. I had a client several years ago that was being pursued by a multinational. And these guys were a field service company. They go out and install and fix things. They had trucks on the road, service guys and things like that. And it was a multinational that did something similar and wanted to kind of bolt them on. And it was a lonely journey for the business owner because these guys, they're professionals. They had a deal team, like department, because they acquire all the time. And this was his first acquisition experience. And it was very stressful. And he didn't have a deal team around him. He was just trying to white knuckle it the whole way. And these guys were really taking advantage of him. They'd be all nice at first. Oh, we love your business. It's amazing. You've done such great things. And, we'd like to offer you this. And then as they're dealing with him in their due diligence, was really more of a beat up process. They kept telling him how ugly his baby was and how much less they're going to give him. And he was sort of navigating that alone. I mean, I was supporting him, but he didn't have a deal team at the time.
Right.
And that was, it didn't conclude.
Right.
Yeah, they were just really trolling. But that happens, right? You get some of these professional acquirers that they can sense when someone isn't ready or doesn't have the skill to go toe to toe with them. And you can leave a lot of enterprise value on the table if you don't have the right deal team to protect you from those guys as well, right?
Yeah, and something we've seen, I would say, the last 10 years is a lot of unsolicited offers. Business owners will get an offer. They hold it up and say, wow, this is amazing. Someone wants to buy my business. Well, guess what? There's probably 4,000 flyers that got sent out. They're probably one of the 4,000. There's ego. They feel great about it. Say, oh, what's the harm in calling these individuals back? Now, the problem I have with this, when folks reach out and say, look at this, I have a huge opportunity to sell, is what is the value of your business? Well, I'm not sure. Are you ready to sell? Like, are you ready to exit? Psychologically, are you comfortable to sell? Could you sell today? Well, sure, if the price is right? So I mean, what that tells me is the level of readiness is not there. The level of excitement is high because, someone has told you your baby's beautiful without actually seeing your baby, so to speak. But you're really not prepared to appropriately respond to that unsolicited offer. And what we're seeing now is the markets are changing much more quickly year over year. One industry might be hot today, tomorrow it may not be. When they receive the unsolicited offer, good chance that their market is hot, their industry is hot, and buyers are trying to pursue businesses in that space. But is the seller ready? Have they optimized? Now, if they pre-plan, they go through this program and they're ready, they can time the market. They can look at these unsolicited offers and say, hey, is this real? Is it not real? They can run a process, make sure that they get the best fit. But I think it really does set them up for success because they're not relying on one defined moment. They've created something that's saleable anytime.
And can create some competition, right? Like
Absolutely.
from buyers, right? Those can drive up the value as well.
Sure.
I mean, something that you've done for my clients in the past is valuations. And I think it's really important that a business owner know what their value is now, what it might and they're never perfect, right? But it's what the business might go for in the open market in today's environment.
Right.
And if that number looks good, well, great, then they're on the right track. But if it doesn't meet what they need to get out of their business for retirement or next steps, then we can plot a course for, well, what is going to increase that valuation, right? What does that valuation need to be? What are some of the levers that we can pull that are going to help them get there? And then we need some runway in order to do that and get them to having the valuation that's going to make them happy. So that's the other thing too, is like if they get an unsolicited offer, they don't know what their business is worth. They can't compare an offer that might look good initially to what the fundamentals are really saying to them.
I completely agree. And I really believe that if business owners take an honest look under the hood and say, what is this thing worth? Well in advance, if there's a gap, they can bring someone like you on and say, okay, how do we bring it from where we are today to where it needs to go? Like John's a good example of that, where he probably sensed that it wasn't optimized, his business could improve. He brought you in 3 years down the road, successful exit. Yeah. Wonderful story. Had he decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing things the way I'm doing them, chances are would have flatlined, he'd still be operating today.
It was flatlined when he came to me. It had been several years, and not that it was still profitable, but it just wasn't growing. Because we kind of touched on it earlier. You just hit that plateau where you just can't do anymore. Right. As an owner, there's only so much you can do in a day, and you end up just reacting. Yeah. So I can think of that example of there was another client of mine that you and I met with, and you helped him understand what his valuation was, and it wasn't a great number. And we really looked at that and said, okay, well, where do you need to be? And went to work on that. And now he's in a much better spot 2.5, 3 years after that. Wow. And yeah, he'll be talking to you shortly if he hasn't already. But it's one of those things, it's easy to do, but it's easy not to do. Like there's no urgency. And I find that most business owners really do often. And it's God bless them. Like they're just responding to the urgent things that are coming up. Because it's right in their face and it's urgent, it's a problem. But really sale readiness, there's no urgency to it until there is. Right. So it's one of those things that as a business owner, if, you want to get started on as soon as you can. It doesn't have to be a lot of work either. You can do it gradually over time, but just having a plan in place, like knowing where your weak spots are and what's hurting your valuation and what levers to pull that are going to improve it and how long they might take. And just get to work on it bit by bit. We call that working on the business versus working in the business. Right.
And it'll give you a lot of peace of mind knowing that you're going in the right direction. You've got a few data points. You know that if you were to go to market, it's worth X today, and you're working on optimizing. And I would say too, in my world, when a bank is looking at the business and they're wondering if they should fund it for the buyer, they're looking at the same metrics you're looking to optimize. There's no rocket science to this. I wish I could say we're selling a product no one else can duplicate or there's a secret recipe, but the reality is these are pretty straightforward concepts, right? We're talking about customer concentration, making sure that you have supplier optionality, you're managing the cash flow, you understand what's driving your business, you understand, what the growth drivers are. I think just taking a step back and understanding what the next 5-10 years could be, if you were to transition it, what would that next person do to take it to the next level? These are things that I think most business owners understand. They just don't spend, like you said, the time on the business, mapping it, tracking it, getting the team aligned. And those are the pieces that I would say are really the secret sauce at the end of the day. Those are things that the bank's looking for, the buyer's looking for.
I think a great barometer of whether a business is kind of ready for sale is, can the business owner take a 3-month holiday and the business continues to grow? If that's the case, and that might sound shocking, like, oh my gosh, I can't be away for 3 months and have it grow. But that's okay. If that's the case, then where do we need to go to work? Because that might say that you don't have proper marketing in place or sales process, or that you don't trust your team, or the team isn't capable, that you're holding it all together. But really, and we kind of touched on this earlier, that key person reliance challenge, that a business, an acquirer wants to see that does not exist, that there's a strong leadership team in place, even for the small business, that everything isn't completely reliant on the owner. And that can take some time, right, to develop that team as well. But I think that's one of the key things that we can ask ourselves: can we take time away from the business and still have it grow?
Right. I think the other element too that really factors more so into the selling process, and a lot of people, maybe highlight, because it's an intangible, is just the readiness of the individual. Have they thought about what they want to do and where they want to spend their time? Have they talked to their partner, their spouse? Have they talked to their family about what's meaningful? Sometimes we find that there's decisions being made behind the individual we're dealing with. Could be family members. And sometimes they themselves don't know where they're going to spend their time. And I think we touched on this earlier. If you do plan in advance, you have many more options. You can phase yourself out. You can put management in place, manage from a distance. You can sell to staff members. You can bring in a lead individual and have a management buyout. You can bring on a partner who provides capital and helps scale while you remain invested. Or you can sell 100%. You have numerous options. However, what I typically will find is that decision needs to be driven by the seller, the business owner. What do they truly want? What fits best? What's the best profile for them, right? And I think that's the piece they really need to understand and reflect on.
And that's the part where they're largely unaware. And that's why it's great for them to have a conversation with you. You can share all these different options with them and open their eyes to that. That's not just necessarily sale and walk away. There are those other options and opportunities. Something that's not talked about very much, but I'm aware of it from some business owners that I know, is that if they've been in their business for a long time and they've really dedicated themselves to it and they've put a lot of hours in, they may not be very well connected with their spouse if they have one. And so thinking about, and there may be challenges there behind the scenes that they haven't worked on because the business is in the way. When the business is no longer the excuse of why they're not working on the relationship, then that can be a problem as well.
Right.
You're kind of having to get to know your spouse all over again. It's not like, okay, see you tonight. It's like, see you for breakfast, see you for lunch, see you for dinner too. It's like, if there's work to be done, that's really got to be done. So I think sometimes business owners avoid dealing with that as well. But it's not something people really talk about, but it's definitely there.
So maybe they want a consulting agreement for 3 to 5 years post-sale so they can time the relationship evolution.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit beyond my ability in coaching people in that scope.
Yeah.
But I think it does point to what's really going on behind the decisions, right? And how decisions are made. There are things that we're not privy to that are happening. And I think they need enough runway to be thinking through this, dealing with it, talking to family, talking with their coach, saying, hey, what do you think about this? My understanding too is wealth advisors usually get into the crux of these discussions as well. They have to understand, hey, how is the family going to get funded? What if something were to happen to you? Where would this leave the family, right?
Yeah.
We just, we're grateful when those pieces are in place and those discussions have happened. All I can really do now is highlight it and say, talk to someone like yourself, because it's so very important. And sometimes too, what we found is sellers are not sure what they want. They're not sure what decision they should make. It's going to take them time to figure it out. They need to figure it out. They will pump the brakes right to the finish line unless they're really confident in what direction they should move.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other items I think that can feed into that is a fear of what's going to happen to their team after they sell. Like if they've had a loyal team for however many years, people that they've worked with for years and they care about, they may worry about, okay, what's going to happen, once I sell and I'm out of the picture, what's going to happen to my team? Because they want to see their team looked after.
Right.
So that's another piece that can sometimes lead to a bit of hesitation on getting ready.
Right.
But it's interesting. There's only so many hours in the day. And a business owner can work in their business and just do the work of the business, or they can take a portion of that time and allocate it towards working on the business and just getting it sale ready. I mean, even an hour a week of dedicated time around having some of these discussions with service providers like me, like you, the other ones that we mentioned on the deal team, and just getting some situational awareness around, okay, where are my weak points? And being able to go to work on them. It doesn't have to be a huge distraction. It doesn't have to be hard work. It just takes a bit of focus. And I think if business owners were just to put a little more time into it and have the awareness and know what their path needs to look like, we'd have a lot more business owners that are ready when they need to be.
Right.
And not on their back foot when it comes time to maybe have to sell.
Do you ever encounter business owners who say, listen, like I'm constantly firefighting. My time is super valuable. I'm trying to put these fires out. I don't have time for coaching. I don't have time to take a step back and think about the business.
Yeah, in fact, I can think of one individual that in a retail location that I went to recently, they were on the phone at the counter. They sell auto parts and things like that. And they're at the counter. They had a staff member waiting for them. There's another guy waiting in the lobby. And I'm waiting for this guy. And he's taking calls and he's directing people. And he was almost just like an octopus, just pushing things around. And I said to him, wow, you're really running today. He goes, oh, it's been like this for the last 40 years. It's cost me 2 marriages. And I thought to myself, oh, I could probably help this guy. But then I thought, that's a lot of experience in being in that pattern. So probably wouldn't be open to coaching. But yeah, some folks they think this is how it is, whatever their scenario is. And like, it's just how it is. They don't really believe that there's the possibility of change because they've been in the scenario for so long. So folks like that, I would love to help, but they're not really open to it.
Right.
Because they just think, this is the business. It's just how it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of people that will reach out to you or you'll come across, do they have a level of awareness that, hey, I can do better than what I'm doing. The business isn't optimized. I'm spending a ton of time, like you said. There's got to be a different way of doing this.
That's generally what it is. There's sort of 2 scenarios. There's business owners that are in what I would call the business emergency room, the ER. They're really struggling. They might have huge cash flow problems. They might have huge competitive issues, and they're really struggling. There's those folks, and I have worked with and have helped. It's a little bit tougher because, again, the business is a reflection of the business owner, and if they're in the emergency room in their business, that's probably because of the way they think about their business and the decisions they make and the actions they take have led to that. So undoing all that can be challenging. The folks that I really enjoy working with, I call them, they're in the business gymnasium. They're working out, they're keeping fit. And maybe they need like a personal trainer, right, to optimize. And so they're already doing well, and they realize that, there might be a better way, might be a different way, might be a more optimized way to run the business and to grow it. Or they're doing well, but they've, like in our case with John, they've hit a plateau. And they're like, I'm feeling some discomfort or dissatisfaction with this plateau. I know there's another way. I want to keep going. I've got these goals and dreams and ambitions, but I'm just feeling a little bit stuck. And so those folks are great to work with because they're already at the business gym, let's say. They're open to learning, open to working on themselves. And while they have some dissatisfaction that they're not moving forward as fast as they would like or in the direction they'd like, they know it's possible and they're open to ideas of how to do that.
Right.
And they apply them.
Right. Now, is there a typical moment in time when they hit a certain age where business owners become more reflective, or are you seeing people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s across the board?
I think, I couldn't point to a specific number, but I think it is once they get into their 50s.
Right.
And they might have friends that are a little bit older than them that are retiring, or maybe they've had someone that they know that has exited their business, and they start thinking about it for themselves.
Right.
Or they might have had a health setback. And they're like, okay, this business is really taking too much from me from a health perspective. Could be physical health, could be mental health. And they realize that something's got to change.
Right.
So they may have sort of like an aha wake up moment when something happens in their life and like, this isn't the life I said I was going to lead. I refuse to continue on this way. I need to tame this thing.
Right.
And get it more working for me as opposed to being a slave to the business. So sometimes that happens. That can be health issue, as I mentioned, mental or physical health. It could be a relationship breakdown. Or they lose someone close to them and they realize, hey, life's too short to work the way I'm working. Right. But in general, I see that sometimes, unfortunately, but it's often they just sort of get to that level of maturity where they start thinking about the future a little bit more.
Yeah.
And they're like, I think I maybe need to get this thing ready. I need to do something a little different.
Yeah. Now, if someone were to start a coaching relationship, what does that look like? The cadence, touch points, how does it start and how does it evolve?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I like to do is just an introductory conversation. If someone's curious about coaching, what it's like, how it could help them, if the fit is even there, let's have a quick 15-minute kind of conversation and I'll answer any questions they have about coaching and I'll ask them about their business and their goals and the challenges that they're having. If that conversation goes well and it feels like we're having a good conversation, like we're a good fit, we'll schedule what I call business diagnostic. And that's where we'll spend an hour or two really digging in to some of the key things that they're either looking to achieve or that they might be struggling with in terms of challenge. And so it's sort of a complementary coaching session. So we're really digging in on one or two key things that are really important for them. And my goal with that conversation is that they leave that interaction with some clarity and confidence about what to do about one of those challenges or how to get a little closer to that opportunity. And if that conversation goes well, that's when we'll both kind of have a sense of whether working together is a fit. Whether I think that I can get them the ROI, because I can't just be an expensive friend for my clients. We have to have a serious return on investment. And I like to get at least 10 to 30 times return of whatever they're paying for coaching on their business. But there's the way the coaching works is, well, first off, after that initial interaction, the diagnostic, we'll kind of have the sense of where we need to go, but then we'll dig in for more of a strategic planning session. So as you mentioned, I'm a scaling up coach. So we do an annual planning session, which is an offsite, and we get the whole leadership team out. And we're really planning, what does the next year look like? What are the challenges that we need to overcome? What are some of the opportunities that we want to get after? What are some of the roadblocks that might be in the way? And we'll break that down into a quarterly plan and say, okay, well, what are our goals for the next quarter? What we call something the critical number? What's the number one metric that we need to achieve? And we'll work a plan back from there. And each team member will know how they're going to contribute to achieving that in concert. And the way that I coach is generally twice per month with my clients. We'll have a 1 hour session twice per month. And that's our in the calendar dedicated time. But I'm available asynchronously whenever they need me as well. But that's where we're really focused in on how are we doing, looking at our metrics, looking at our numbers, how are we progressing, what are we stalled out on, if anything, and what do we need to do to keep moving. And helping my clients to really implement all the things that we talked about, make sure they've got a proper plan in place for growth, that they know what their cash requirements are going to be, helping them reduce their cash conversion cycle to improve cash flow, getting all their different financial processes and systems in place, identifying where team members need to develop, identifying if team members need to be released to pursue success elsewhere, because sometimes that's the case, they're not a fit, they need to find a better fit for themselves. Making sure they've got all the fundamentals that are in place. They've got strong marketing, strong brand, a strong sales process, strong admin, just having everything really running smoothly. Right. And also with the focus on developing the team. That's really the role of the business owner, is to develop leaders beneath them and have those leaders develop leaders beneath them. Right. And when we've got that focus, the business owner has much more ability to step back and focus on the strategic and really lead, as opposed to be in the weeds, putting out fires and things like that. Right.
I can tell you too, our firm follows scaling up methodology, and having a quarterly target, having everyone align makes a huge difference. They know where the firm is heading. They know what the goals are. They know how they plug into the system. You're getting more motivated staff, more coordination between the crew, and it's a lot more fun when everyone knows where you're headed.
And you're a team.
You're a team, a true team. Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's mutual respect, there's understanding, there's supports in place, and people feel like they're part of something and not just going to work for a paycheck. Right. I think that's where you really get that discretionary energy from folks, that passion, that they really want to come to work and do a great job. They want to help further the goals. And when the business is growing like that, then people can be rewarded better as well, right? So it's like a win-win for everybody.
Mutually beneficial. Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that sometimes it's the business owner who's getting in their own way, and they need to understand that perhaps if they take a step aside, it's going to open up the floodgates?
Yes.
No pause there. No. I love it.
Yeah, very often. But and again, it's like we talked about, the thing that made them successful doing that work in the business, that's correlated with hanging on to things, right? Yeah. But if they have good team members, like the team members want to do a good job, they want to take on responsibility and grow themselves, right? So if you have the right people, and you can step aside and train them up and mentor them and guide them, they'll step right up.
Right. It's what they want. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing all of this. We covered a lot of ground today. We talked about planning in advance. We talked about how to improve the business prior to selling. We talked about the ROI of coaching, and I love how you quantify your value. If there's not positive ROI, you're not adding value. It's probably not the right fit.
Yeah.
And I think that's really meaningful. If there's one takeaway you want individuals, business owners to remember about scaling up or preparing for the future, what would that be?
I would say the number one thing is to actually come and talk to you, just to find out what the options are and get a valuation. Know what your business is worth today. It might be an exciting number, but it might be a terrifying number as well. And if you're not happy with the number that you get, maybe that would be the motivation to do the work on the business to get it scaling, to build that valuation out, so that when the time is right to exit, you've got a multiple and a valuation that you're happy with that can provide for your future. So I really think that's where I would start to talk with yourself or an M&A professional close to them, and just find out, what are my options here?
Right.
Where are the weaknesses in the business, where are the strengths, and what might it be worth, just so they've got that situational awareness and know what they need to do to move forward. Or find out that they're in great shape and they can go to market.
It's peace of mind, and I think it's great advice. I think if people have a starting point, they can figure out where they currently are, then they can start being proactive and moving forward to the next chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to know where you're at to know where you're going to go.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate you joining again. Always a pleasure to have you, and we'll make sure that we have your contact information readily available for those that want to reach out.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Jim.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome.
Please remember to like or subscribe to keep this podcast handy, and we'll see you next time.